The hall shimmered with artificial light and tension. Built into the shell of an ancient asteroid, the Aether's Edge diplomatic station hung like a jeweled dagger over a gas giant, silent, gleaming, dangerous. Delegates from 17 star empires sat at curved crystal tables. Holoscribes floated nearby, recording every word. The air buzzed with translators and unsaid threats. Captain Marius Cade adjusted his collar, ignoring the sidelong glances of the taller, more exotic species surrounding him. Humanity was still new here, raw, loud, and often underestimated. He preferred it that way. The summit was dragging. Endless talk. Polite lies wrapped in protocol. Marius had just risen to stretch his legs when he heard a voice behind him. Soft, clear. "You've never tried one, THOR." He turned. A girl stood there, her skin a pale starlight gray, eyes too large for her face, glowing faintly violet. She held something in her hand, a smooth teardrop-shaped fruit. Its surface shimmered like molten silver, veined with a deep amber glow. He blinked. "I'm sorry, what did you just call me?" "THOR," she repeated, calmly. "The Thunderer. It is what you are, yes. I'm a diplomat, or trying to be." He crossed his arms, uneasy. "And what's that?" She extended the fruit. "Aurelian Midia. You've never tasted it." He shook his head slowly. "That's extinct. It hasn't been seen since the silver culling." Her gaze didn't waver. "Then you understand why I am not supposed to exist either." Guards began to move in. The girl, barefoot, cloaked in torn fabric, with a single band of glowing script running down her right arm, wasn't on any manifest. She had no name badge, no delegation, no place at the summit. And yet, she stood there like the whole galaxy had to answer her. One of the tall insectoid envoys snapped something sharp in its own language. 2 guards broke into a run. "Wait," Marius barked, stepping in front of her. "She's not armed. She is not registered," a diplomatic AI hissed through a wall speaker. "Unverified presences are considered threats. Step aside, human." Marius didn't move. The girl slipped the fruit gently into his hand. "You'll understand soon. Just don't let them take it. Or me." A dozen cameras turned, sensing a scandal. One of the guards pulled an energy baton. Marius moved on instinct. Fast, he blocked the strike and shoved the man back hard. Gasps echoed across the hall. The Earth ambassador had just assaulted a peacekeeper. Alarms flared in the corners of the room. Everyone stood at once. The girl didn't run. She simply placed her hand on Marius's arm and whispered, "They will remember this moment for centuries." The guards seized her. Marius didn't fight them again. Not yet. He watched her being dragged out, her face unreadable, her eyes locked onto his. The fruit still rested in his palm. Warm, humming softly, like it remembered something ancient. Behind him, whispers exploded like wildfire. "Who is she? Where did that fruit come from? Did she say, THOR?" The High Council demanded answers. Marius gave them none. Not yet. He looked down at the glowing fruit. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat. The holding chamber was too clean. Metal walls hummed softly, bathed in pale blue light. A single force field separated sci-fi from the outside world. No bars, no locks, just energy and silence. Captain Marius Cade stood just beyond the barrier, arms crossed, the strange fruit still secured in a protective case strapped to his belt. He'd fought for hours to get this moment alone with her. Dozens of officials objected. 3 governments protested. But he didn't care. He needed answers. Sayari sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, her breathing calm. She looked like she belonged in a temple, not a prison. "You picked a hell of a time to crash the galaxy's most fragile peace summit," Marius said. Her eyes opened slowly. "I didn't crash it, THOR. I answered a call." "There you go again." He stepped closer. "That name, THOR. Why do you keep calling me that?" She tilted her head. Because it is who you are. You may not remember, but the stars do. Marius almost laughed, but couldn't. Too much had happened in too little time. That fruit, Aurelian Midia, was confirmed real by 3 labs. A sample of living history. Impossible. Dangerous. And she wasn't on any known registry. Facial scans returned nothing. No race, no faction, no flag. You're not supposed to exist, he said quietly. Sayari nodded. My people were erased during the Silence War. Not defeated, deleted. Our names, our temples, our blood, all vanished. By who? By those who feared what we kept hidden. Marius narrowed his eyes. And what was that? She looked at him, and her gaze felt older than time. The truth about the Thunderer. Before he could respond, the chamber door slid open. A diplomatic aide rushed in, breathless. Captain Cade, Earth's seat on the summit is being revoked. 3 empires are demanding your removal. Marius didn't even flinch. Let them scream. She's under my protection now. You assaulted a guard on neutral ground. I intervened before someone got hurt, he snapped. She hasn't attacked anyone. Sayari stood now, graceful and still barefoot. They are afraid. Not of me. Of what I represent. If the fruit is real, then so is the archive inside it. Archive. Marius blinked. You mean there's data in that fruit? Not digital, she said softly. Living memory. Our ancestors stored knowledge inside the Midia's biostructure. Stories, codes, secrets. Marius's hand instinctively brushed the case at his side. Then we need to unlock it. Sayari's smile was sad. They will never allow it. If the truth emerges, the balance of power breaks. The accords will fall. Old debts will come due. You think I'm just going to let them bury you? Marius stepped toward the field. You came to me for a reason. Start talking. She stepped forward, so close they were only inches apart through the invisible wall. There was once a time, she whispered, when Earth stood not at the edge of the galaxy, but at its heart. You were called THOR not because of war, but because you carried the storm and the peace that followed. A cold shiver crawled down Marius's spine. The force field shimmered, then fell away. Emergency sirens howled across the station. Security breach. A voice crackled over the comms. Assassins in Section 4. Marius drew his weapon. Sayari didn't flinch. They've come for me. He looked at her and made a choice. Then they'll have to go through me first. The lights flickered red across Aether's edge. Marius moved fast, pulling Sayari behind him as they sprinted through the winding back corridors of the station. Echoes of gunfire and energy blasts bounced off the metal walls. The diplomatic summit had shattered in seconds. Now it was open chaos. Keep low, Marius shouted, diving behind a steel cargo unit as 3 pulse rounds scorched the air overhead. Sayari didn't scream. She crouched beside him, breathing steady, watching the corridor with glowing eyes. How are they tracking us? Marius muttered. They're not. They're following the fruit. He glanced at the glowing case still strapped to his belt. Seriously. Sayari nodded. The Midia pulse is unique, sacred to some, dangerous to others. Its presence is setting off alarms across the old bloodlines. A team of black armored figures rounded the corner. Not security. Mercenaries. Marius raised his sidearm. Guess they want a taste. He fired, clean and precise. 2 shots downed the lead attackers. The rest scattered. Sayari watched him with something close to admiration. You've done this before, she said. I didn't start out as a diplomat. They moved again, ducking through maintenance shafts, bypassing locked doors. The path led deeper into the old levels of Aether's Edge, forgotten tunnels built when the station was just a mining hub. Marius halted near a sealed bulkhead. This is a dead end. No, Sayari said quietly, pressing her palm against the wall. Glowing lines lit up around her hand, pulsing to the same rhythm as the fruit. The door hissed open. Inside, a chamber of smooth black metal and floating lights. Old tech, ancient design. Not built by humans, not even recent species. This isn't on the maps, Marius breathed. It wouldn't be. This place was built before the maps. Sayari stepped into the chamber. Holograms bloomed from the floor, golden spirals, glyphs in no known language. But one shape hovered at the center, a tall figure with a hammer of light in one hand and a glowing fruit in the other. The name beneath it read, in simplified galactic common, THOR. Marius stared. That's me. No, Sayari said softly. That was the first thunderer. From Earth's first rise, long before your recorded history, you are his echo. Not a copy, something more dangerous. He turned to her. You're saying Earth was part of the galaxy before. Not just part. Earth was a pillar, a founding world of the old accord. When the Silence War came, Earth vanished. Some believed it was destroyed. Others believed it hid. And now it's back, Marius said. Sayari nodded. You're not just a man, Marius. You are THOR. The name is not a title of war. It means one who awakens the thunder in others. The chamber pulsed. The fruit on his belt glowed brighter. I didn't ask for this, he said, stepping back. No one ever does, Sayari said gently, but they always answer. Suddenly, a shockwave ripped through the wall. The mercenaries had found them. Marius grabbed Sayari, pulling her behind cover. The holograms flickered. He looked down at the fruit, then at the symbol of THOR glowing above them. Something deep inside him stirred, old and raw. Maybe he wasn't ready. But neither was the galaxy. He stood, eyes hard, weapon ready. Let's give them a storm. The banquet hall was a sea of polished metal and glass, a breathtaking space designed for the finest of galactic gatherings. Floating holoscreens projected grandiose views of distant nebulae, stars twinkling like diamonds in the void. But in the middle of the luxury, tension crackled like static. Captain Marius Cade, now marked as a rogue ambassador by half the galaxy, stood at the far end of the room, flanked by security. His gaze swept across the room, noting the rigid posture of the elite diplomats, the nervous energy in the air. Sayari stood beside him, her expression unreadable. She wore a flowing silver gown that clung to her form, a stark contrast to the ragged clothes she'd been wearing when he first met her. Yet there was something undeniably regal in her presence now, the last of the Midian priestesses, carrying an ancient legacy. And her eyes burned with purpose. This is insane, Marius muttered under his breath. They're not going to just let you walk out of here. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked straight ahead at the assembly of species, each one more exotic than the next. Warrior races, merchant kings, and scholarly alien diplomats, all seated at tables laden with delicacies from worlds far and wide. And they were all watching him. His grip tightened on the Aurelian Midia fruit, still glowing faintly at his side. His earlier decision to bring it to this banquet, this high-stakes meeting, had earned him the ire of more than one galactic power. But it was too late to back out now. Ladies and gentlemen, a booming voice called out, drawing all eyes to the dais. The ambassador of Zyrak, a towering creature with translucent skin and an elongated head, stood with his arms raised, a grin on his multi-jawed face. We gather today, as our respected Earth envoy has graciously agreed to join us, to discuss matters of great importance. Let us raise our glasses. A dozen goblets filled with shimmering liquid floated toward the guests, but Marius barely noticed. His mind was racing, calculating, analyzing the risks. Suddenly, the air shifted, an unseen current running through the room. Every diplomat's posture stiffened. Eyes shifted to the entrance. At the far door, a group of heavily armed soldiers entered. They moved with purpose, taking positions around the edges of the hall. Their black armor gleamed menacingly under the light. A low hum reverberated through the floor. A quiet murmur rose. "Do you know them?" Marius whispered, keeping his voice low. Sayari's eyes narrowed. "Yes, mercenaries hired by the Arcthan Dominion. They think they can silence me before I reveal the truth." Marius exhaled slowly. "Not if I can help it." With a sudden motion, he reached for his weapon, a compact plasma blade attached to his belt. But before he could pull it free, a sharp voice rang out across the hall. "Enough." The room fell silent. The Shirek ambassador had lowered his arms and now glared at Marius, his multi-jawed face twisting in a snarl. "Do not be so foolish, human. You do not know the consequences of your actions. You brought this upon yourself by meddling with forces far beyond your understanding." Marius met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not here for your politics. I'm here for the truth." The hall erupted into a chaotic mix of shouted threats, demands, and warnings. The mercenaries moved closer, weapons drawn. Tension snapped through the air like a taut wire. Marius stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "If you want to stop us, you'll have to fight for it." Before anyone could react, he drew his plasma blade, the hum of the weapon filling the silence. The mercenaries charged. Time slowed. Sayari moved with him. The air around her shimmered as if responding to her energy. Her hand flashed out, weaving through the chaos. Energy blades crackled to life at her wrists. The first mercenary lunged. Marius met him with a precise strike, the plasma blade cutting through armor with ease. Another came at him from behind. He spun, knocking the assailant's gun aside and delivering a brutal elbow to the man's chest. Sayari was a blur beside him, her movements graceful yet lethal. She disarmed one soldier, spinning him to the ground before turning on the next. The battle was quick, but vicious. Sparks flew as weapons clashed. Diplomats screamed and scattered. "Are you ready to leave?" Marius asked, his voice calm in the chaos. Sayari nodded, her face set. "The storm has already begun. Let's finish this." Together, they cut through the mercenaries with lethal precision, carving a path toward the exit. But even as they fought, the full weight of what was happening began to sink in. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was the beginning of something much larger. The truth was coming, and no one, no empire, no power, could stop it. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the empty corridors, the hum of the station's engines the only other noise. Marius Cade's pulse was still racing, but his movements were steady, controlled. He could hear the crash of distant explosions behind them, the shouts of mercenaries as they regrouped. They were coming. Fast. Sayari was right behind him, her every step silent, almost ethereal. The Midia fruit, still glowing faintly at her side, seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. It was more than just a relic. Marius had only begun to understand how deep the power of this artifact ran. "We're almost there," Marius said, glancing over his shoulder. Sayari didn't respond, her focus sharp. She had a purpose now, a goal that transcended survival. The truth she carried with her had become too dangerous to hide. "Why is it so important?" Marius asked suddenly, his voice low but urgent. "This fruit, this archive, why are they willing to kill for it?" Sayari's gaze flicked toward him, a fleeting sadness in her eyes. "Because it carries the key to everything. The truth of the Thunderer, of Earth's role in the galaxy, of your people's true legacy." Marius frowned. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that." "You don't have to be," Sayari replied softly. "The storm is already here. You've been chosen to carry it, THOR." The use of his name sent a jolt through him, like an electric current. He had been called many things in his life, but never this. Never THOR. Ahead of them, the hallways began to narrow, the light dimming as they neared the old transport docks. The exit was close, but so were the mercenaries. He could hear their boots pounding the floor behind them, their voices shouting commands. They weren't far. Marius gritted his teeth. He could feel the weight of the plasma blade in his hand, its hum a steady reminder that he wasn't entirely helpless. But he knew that this wasn't just about fighting. It never had been. It was about making a choice. A door at the end of the hall slid open, revealing a long, narrow platform that extended out into the void of space. The transport ship, an old but reliable model, was waiting for them. Its engines hummed quietly, the lights blinking green as if to say, "It's time to leave." Marius pushed forward, urging Sayari ahead. "Get on the ship. I'll hold them off." Sayari stopped, turning to face him. "You don't understand, do you? This isn't just about running anymore. We can't escape this storm." Marius felt the ground under his feet shift, a deep rumble vibrating through the station. The storm had already begun, but the real battle was yet to come. Behind them, the mercenaries were closing in, their weapons raised. But Marius wasn't afraid anymore. The weight of his decision had already settled in his chest. It wasn't about fighting for survival. It was about fighting for something far greater. "Get on the ship," Marius repeated, his voice firm. "I'll hold them off long enough." Sayari met his gaze, her eyes glowing with an intensity that matched his own. She reached for the Midia fruit, pulling it free from its case. The light around it intensified, brighter, sharper, as if it were alive. "We do this together," she said. Before Marius could respond, the first wave of mercenaries turned the corner, weapons aimed. Marius raised his blade, his muscles tense, ready for the confrontation. But it was Sayari who acted first. She stepped forward, her hand raised, and in a flash, a wave of energy surged through the hallway. The mercenaries faltered, momentarily stunned as a shockwave pulsed from her fingertips. The energy was so powerful, so raw, that it felt as if the very air around them was charged with lightning. Marius's breath caught in his throat. He had known she was dangerous. But this was something else entirely. "Go," Sayari said, her voice steady despite the power she was wielding. "Now." Marius didn't hesitate. He sprinted for the ship, launching himself onto the ramp. But he didn't look back. Not this time. The storm had come, and they were both caught in it. As the transport's engines roared to life, the mercenaries regrouped and charged, but the door slammed shut just in time. The ship surged forward, leaving Aether's edge behind, a fading speck in the distance. Marius sank into the seat, his chest heaving, adrenaline still racing through his veins. Sayari sat across from him, eyes closed, the Midia fruit glowing softly in her hands. "Is this really happening?" Marius whispered. Sayari opened her eyes, her gaze unwavering. "This is just the beginning, THOR." The stars stretched out before them like a million cold eyes, blinking silently in the endless night. Tempest, the ship they now flew in, was a relic, old but reliable, the kind of vessel that had seen both glory and defeat. Its engines hummed steadily as they drifted farther from Aether's edge, leaving behind the chaos and death that had followed them out of the banquet hall. Marius Cade leaned back in his seat, eyes fixed on the stars. His hand still clutched the plasma blade, his connection to this mess, to the storm he couldn't outrun. Beside him, Sayari sat, her posture regal even in the humble seat. The Midia fruit was tucked carefully beside her, glowing faintly, as if alive with its own heartbeat. The silence in the cockpit was deafening. Even the soft hum of the ship's engine felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. Somewhere, light years away from here, the universe spun on, unaware of the two humans who had just sparked a chain of events that could shake its very foundations. "I thought you said we had time." Marius finally spoke, his voice low. "You said there was more to be done." Sayari didn't look at him. She stared ahead, her gaze locked on the stars. "Time is not what matters now, THOR. The storm cannot be stopped, only faced." Her words lingered in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Marius had heard of the Midian prophecies, ancient texts that spoke of the Thunderer, of Earth's lost legacy, of power that could reshape the galaxy. But it had all seemed like myth, like distant whispers of a forgotten age. Now, it felt too real, too close. "Do you understand what this means?" Marius asked, turning to face her. "What I'm supposed to do?" She nodded slowly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. "No one ever understands the power they hold at first. You're no different. But the truth is already inside you. You just have to listen." Marius gripped the seat, his fingers digging into the worn fabric. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that all of this, the violence, the betrayal, the bloodshed, had a purpose. But every fiber of his being screamed against it. This wasn't what he had signed up for. He was just a soldier, a diplomat, trying to make a difference in a broken galaxy. A beep echoed through the cockpit, pulling them both from their thoughts. Marius glanced at the console, his hand already reaching for the controls. "There's something ahead," he muttered. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the incoming blip on the radar. The ship's proximity alarms chimed, warning them of an approaching force. Sayari's eyes flicked to the screen. "It's them, the Arcthan Dominion." Marius's grip on the controls tightened. "They've been tracking us since we left Aether's Edge. We're not going to outrun them," Sayari said with a quiet certainty. "Not this time." Marius punched a few buttons, sending the Tempest into evasive maneuvers, but the Dominion ship was already locking on. It was larger, faster, more advanced. A predator on the hunt. The ship rattled as a warning shot from the Dominion vessel rocked them. Marius gritted his teeth, forcing his hands steady on the controls. "We don't have much time. What do we do?" Sayari's voice was calm, almost serene. "We face them." Without hesitation, she moved toward the back of the cockpit, her footsteps echoing in the small space. Marius turned to watch her, his pulse racing. She reached for the Midia fruit, her fingers brushing the surface as the glow intensified. "What are you doing?" Marius asked, his heart quickening. He had no idea what she planned to do with that thing. "It's time," she said simply. The energy in the room shifted, and Marius felt it. The sudden pull, the weight of the universe shifting in the space between them. Sayari held the fruit aloft, the light now blinding, illuminating the entire cockpit with a crackling ethereal glow. "Brace yourself," she whispered. The Dominion ship fired again, and this time it wasn't just a warning shot. It tore through the vacuum, a streak of light that struck the Tempest's shields. But instead of panic, Marius felt something else. A surge of energy, a presence that filled the air, like the world was suddenly alive with electricity. His body buzzed, his skin tingled with an unknown power. Sayari's voice rang out, steady and strong. "I'm not afraid. You shouldn't be either." With a snap of her fingers, the light around them exploded. The Midia fruit flared with a brilliance so intense that it seemed to consume everything: the ship, the enemy vessel, the very stars themselves. Marius's heart pounded in his chest as the storm they'd spoken of began to take form, not as a force to be feared, but as something they could wield. It had begun. The world around Marius Cade seemed to stretch and warp, as if time itself had been torn open. The glow from the Midia fruit, still crackling with raw energy, illuminated the cockpit in flashes of blinding light. His body thrummed with the power surging through the ship, and for a moment, he felt something deep within him stir, a primal, ancient force awakening. The Dominion ship loomed large in their view, its weapons powered up and ready for the kill. But as the Tempest shuddered, something strange happened. The energy from the fruit seemed to reach out, not just from Sayari's hands, but from something inside Marius too. "It's in you now," Sayari's voice echoed in his mind, though she hadn't spoken aloud. "You are the Thunderer THOR." Marius gasped, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He hadn't been sure before, but now it was undeniable. The storm was not just a force in the galaxy, it was within him. He had been chosen to wield it. The Tempest lurched forward, its engines no longer bound by the usual constraints of physics. The ship's hull vibrated with an unnatural hum, as if it were tethered to some unseen power. "Sayari, what's happening?" Marius asked, his voice hoarse, the power within him pushing against his control. Sayari turned to him, her eyes glowing with an intensity that matched the brilliance of the Midia fruit. "The fruit is a key, but it is only the beginning. You." She hesitated, her lips curling slightly in a grim smile. "You are the vessel now. The storm will follow you." Marius could feel it now, coursing through him like lightning in his veins. He clenched his fists, every nerve in his body alight with a ferocious energy. It was as if his entire existence had been redefined, as if he had been asleep for years and was finally awakening to his true self. The Dominion ship fired again. This time, the shot wasn't just a warning. It was a direct hit, sending a cascade of sparks through the Tempest's shields. The ship rocked violently, but Marius didn't flinch. He was no longer just a man. He was something more, something greater. Without thinking, he raised a hand. The storm within him responded. A bolt of pure energy shot from his fingertips, streaking through the vacuum of space toward the enemy vessel. The bolt cracked through the darkness, slamming into the Dominion ship with a force that made the stars themselves tremble. The ship's shields flared and screamed under the assault, but they couldn't hold. The bolt tore through them like paper, ripping the Dominion vessel apart from the inside. Marius's breath caught in his throat. The power felt so natural, so absolute. It was as if the very fabric of the universe bent to his will. Beside him, Sayari nodded, her expression unreadable. "It's only the beginning," she repeated, her voice both cautionary and encouraging. "Why me?" Marius whispered, staring at his hand as if it were someone else's. "Why am I the one who gets to wield this?" Sayari paused, her gaze distant as she seemed to search for the right words. "You carry the blood of the Thunderer, THOR. Your ancestors laid the foundation for this power, but they were never able to control it. You are the one who will. The storm is your inheritance." The words settled heavily in the air between them. Marius didn't know what to think, but the truth was undeniable. Whatever was happening, it was too big for him to stop now. Suddenly, a new blip appeared on the radar. Another ship, a larger one, this time. Its silhouette was unmistakable, a battleship of the Arcthan Dominion, far more advanced than the smaller craft they had just destroyed. This wasn't a ship meant for diplomacy. It was a war machine, and it was coming for them. "They've sent reinforcements," Marius muttered, his grip tightening on the controls. Sayari's gaze was fixed on the approaching battleship, her expression steely. "And we will face them," she said, her voice calm and certain. "You don't stop the storm. You ride it." Marius nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The Tempest surged forward, propelled by the unseen force coursing through him. The storm was here. It had come for him, and now it would reshape the galaxy. The battle had only just begun. The Arcthan Dominion battleship loomed in front of them like a giant predator, its sleek, angular shape cutting through the stars. It was a monster of technology, its weapons bristling, ready to tear apart anything that dared challenge it. The distance between the Tempest and the battleship closed rapidly, the tension thick in the air. Marius Cade could feel it deep in his bones. This would be the true test. Beside him, Sayari remained still, her eyes locked on the ship's looming silhouette. The Midia fruit was now fully absorbed into her hands, glowing with an ethereal intensity that cast strange shadows across the cockpit. Marius could feel the power pulsing from her, as though the storm itself was coursing through her veins. "It's time, Thor," Sayari said, her voice barely a whisper. Marius's hands clenched the controls as the Tempest shook from a blast that whizzed by too close for comfort. The shields hummed under the pressure, but they were weakening. The battleship was no longer just a distant threat. It was close enough to strike. "We can't dodge forever," Marius muttered, his gaze fixed on the screen. "We need to do something." Sayari's lips curved into a thin, knowing smile. And we will. But this will be different. Marius didn't have time to ask what she meant before she reached for the Midia fruit, her fingers wrapping around it in a tight grip. The ship jolted again, this time a direct hit that sent sparks flying. The entire hull groaned under the impact, but Marius didn't feel fear. He felt something else, something new, something powerful. He could feel the storm inside him, vibrating, alive. The force that had been lurking in his veins now demanded to be unleashed. His heartbeat quickened as the energy surged within him, urging him forward. He didn't know what he was about to do, but he knew one thing for certain. This was the moment. Sayari's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw not just the power of the Midia fruit, but the weight of everything that had brought them here. The galaxy, the history, the legacy. It was all wrapped up in this one final confrontation. "Let it go, Thor," she said, her voice firm and steady. "You are the Thunderer. It's time to remind them why." The ship shuddered violently, another blast ripping through the shields. But this time, Marius didn't flinch. Instead, he closed his eyes, drew in a deep breath, and let the storm take control. Energy flared inside him. Power coursed through every nerve, every muscle. It wasn't just electricity. It was a force of nature, raw and untamed. His hand shot forward, not out of fear, but out of purpose. The cockpit windows burst with light as a wave of energy surged outward, a shockwave that rippled through the space between them and the enemy battleship. The Dominion ship's forward shields flickered before they shattered, the blast carrying through their hull with the force of a star collapsing. The entire ship trembled, its weapons silenced, its engines suddenly faltering. Marius opened his eyes to see the destruction unfold. The Arcthan battleship was crumbling, its once imposing frame now a dying carcass. The storm had answered his call. Sayari's gaze remained steady, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of approval, a recognition of what had just happened. She nodded once, slowly, as if confirming what he already knew. "You did it," she whispered. "You're the Thunderer." Marius felt the weight of her words settle around him, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like just a soldier. He was something more now, something that could change the galaxy. The tempest surged forward, leaving the burning wreckage of the Dominion ship behind. But Marius wasn't thinking about victory or defeat. His thoughts were filled with the storm that now raged inside him. The future was uncertain, but he knew one thing. He was no longer just a man. He was the storm, and the storm would never stop.